The golden hues of the evening sun bathed the quiet suburban street in a warm, honey-like glow, casting long, soft shadows on the pavement. The air carried a crisp autumn scent, the kind that reminded Emma of childhood days spent playing in piles of fallen leaves, long before the weight of expectations crushed her spirit. She adjusted her grip on Lily's tiny hand, feeling the warmth of her daughter's fingers wrapped around her own. It was a small comfort, a silent reminder of the bond they shared, a bond she had sworn to protect at all costs. As they approached the large, towering house where she had spent most of her life, a wave of anxiety gripped Emma's chest. She had not been here in months, avoiding it like a place haunted by ghosts, though the ghosts were not supernatural but rather the echoes of sharp words and disapproving glances. The house, with its pristine white walls and neatly trimmed hedges, looked exactly the same. It stood tall and proud, an architectural masterpiece, much like her parents, cold, imposing, and untouched by time. Lily's small voice broke through Emma's thoughts. "Mommy, is this where Grandpa and Grandma live?" she asked, tilting her head to look up at the grand house, her innocent brown eyes filled with curiosity. Emma forced a smile, kneeling down to tuck a loose strand of Lily's golden hair behind her ear. "Yes, sweetheart, we're just here for a short visit," she reassured her daughter, though she wasn't sure if the words were meant more for Lily or herself. With a deep breath, she knocked on the massive oak door. The sound echoed in the stillness of the evening, and within seconds, the door creaked open, revealing Richard, her father. He was dressed immaculately, as always, in a crisp navy blue sweater and beige slacks, his silver hair combed neatly back. His piercing gray eyes scanned Emma briefly before shifting to Lily. There was a pause, a heartbeat of silence that felt heavier than it should have. Then, his lips pressed into a thin line, and without a word of greeting, he turned on his heel, walking deeper into the house. Emma sighed. Some things never changed. Steeling herself, she led Lily inside. The house smelled of polished wood and expensive cologne, the same scent that had been present throughout her childhood. It was a scent that carried memories, of lectures at the dinner table, of rigid rules, of never feeling quite enough. In the living room, Linda sat on a plush cream-colored couch, sipping tea from an elegant porcelain cup. She looked up as they entered, her eyes widening slightly as she took in Lily's appearance. Her expression shifted into something unreadable, assessing, calculating. My, she said, setting down her cup with a soft clink. "You've certainly kept her simple." Emma clenched her jaw. She had known this was coming. Her mother's comments had always been laced with a venom so subtle it could almost be mistaken for concern. Lily, oblivious to the tension, beamed. "Grandma, I made this dress myself. Mommy helped a little, but I picked the fabric." She twirled proudly, the soft blue fabric flowing around her like water. Linda arched an eyebrow, the corner of her mouth lifting in something that was not quite a smile. "Is that so?" she said, her tone dismissive. "Well, creativity is charming, I suppose. Though I do wish Emma had dressed you in something more refined. You know, first impressions matter." Emma's heart clenched. She had spent years chasing after her parents' approval, years twisting herself into something more palatable, more acceptable. But she had promised herself she wouldn't do that to Lily. "She looks perfect," Emma said, her voice steady. Richard scoffed from his armchair, flipping through a newspaper. "Perfect, a child should be, raised with standards, not running around looking like a charity case." Emma's nails dug into her palm. Lily's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her delicate features. She looked between her grandparents and her mother, sensing something was wrong but too young to understand why. Linda sighed, as if the whole conversation was exhausting her. And her speech, "She still has that little lisp. Surely you've taken her to a specialist." Emma felt something inside her snap. "She's 6, Mother. She's still learning." Linda shook her head, disappointment etched into every line on her face. "I just think it's a shame. With the right upbringing, she could be." "That's enough," Emma cut in sharply. The room fell silent. She rarely raised her voice, especially not in this house, but she refused to let her daughter absorb even a fraction of the self-doubt she had grown up with. Lily's small hand tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Can we go home?" Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. She looked at her parents, the people who had shaped her childhood, who had dictated so much of her self-worth. And in that moment, she saw them not as powerful, intimidating figures, but as small, fragile people trapped in their own narrow world. She took Lily's hand and stood. "Yes, sweetheart, we're going home." Without another word, She turned and walked out the door, leaving behind the house, the expectations, and the need for their approval. She had a daughter to raise, and she would raise her to know that she was already enough. The night air was still, thick with unspoken emotions as Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The soft glow of the nightlight cast gentle shadows across the room, but her mind was anything but calm. Lily's quiet breathing filled the silence, a reminder of the little soul who depended on her. Tonight had been a turning point, one that left an ache in Emma's heart. She had spent years trying to earn her parents' approval, bending, changing, molding herself into what they wanted. But in one evening, she had seen with perfect clarity that she would never be enough for them, not in the way they demanded. And worse, she saw how their sharp words had begun to chip away at Lily's innocence, the same way they had chipped away at her when she was a child. That was something she could never allow to continue. Rolling onto her side, Emma reached out and gently smoothed a hand over Lily's golden curls. Her daughter stirred slightly but remained asleep, her little fingers still curled around the edge of her favorite stuffed bunny. A lump formed in Emma's throat. She had to do better. Not for herself, but for Lily. The next morning, the decision sat heavy in her chest, but it also carried a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in years. She picked up her phone, staring at her mother's number one last time before blocking it. Then, she did the same with her father's. No calls, no texts, no more carefully planned visits that always ended in disappointment. Lily bounced into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, her smile bright and full of trust. "Mommy, can we go to the park today?" Emma knelt down, pulling her daughter into a hug. "Of course, sweetheart, we can do anything you want." And so, life moved forward. At first, there was silence, no calls from her parents, no emails, no attempts to reach out. It was as if they hadn't noticed she was gone. It hurt more than she wanted to admit, but she reminded herself that their absence was a blessing, not a loss. Without their weight pressing down on her, Emma began to focus on Lily in ways she hadn't before. They spent more time outdoors, exploring the world together. They baked cookies, painted on the patio, and built forts in the living room. But most importantly, Emma poured love and encouragement into her daughter, counteracting every harsh word her parents had ever spoken. "You are strong. You are smart. You are enough, just as you are." Years passed, and Lily flourished. She was bright, creative, and full of life, with a heart so big it amazed Emma every single day. She grew into a confident young girl who wasn't afraid to speak her mind, to stand tall, to embrace the parts of herself that others might have seen as flaws. But Emma wasn't the only one who noticed. One evening, as she was cleaning up after dinner, a familiar name flashed across her screen. Her mother. Emma hesitated for only a second before rejecting the call. The phone rang again, then again. Finally, a text came through. "Emma, we saw Lily on TV. Call us." Emma's stomach twisted. She knew this day would come. Lily, now a teenager, had grown into an incredible writer. Her words touched people in ways that Emma had never imagined. The book she had written, The Girl Who Found Her Voice, had become a sensation. Schools invited her to speak, children looked up to her, parents thanked her for inspiring their kids. And now, suddenly, her parents wanted to reach out. Emma sighed, setting the phone down. She had nothing left to say to them. Days later, an invitation arrived. Lily was being honored at a prestigious award ceremony for her contributions to children's literature. The event was grand, attended by influential figures, educators, and leaders. As Emma helped Lily get ready, she saw the way her daughter carried herself, with confidence, with grace. When they arrived, the room buzzed with excitement. Photographers snapped pictures, journalists took notes. And then, in the midst of it all, Emma spotted them. Richard and Linda stood near the back, dressed impeccably, their expressions unreadable. They hadn't spoken to Emma in years, but now, when the world was celebrating Lily, they had decided to show up. Emma felt a familiar ache rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. This night wasn't about them. Lily took the stage, standing before hundreds of people, her voice steady and sure. "I was told I wasn't good enough," she said. "That I wouldn't fit in. That I needed to be different. But my mother, she believed in me, even when others didn't." The room erupted in applause. Emma met her parents' eyes across the room. For the first time, they looked small. Not powerful, not intimidating, just small. They had spent years looking down on their own granddaughter, only to realize too late that she had become someone extraordinary, without them. and they had no place in her success. The ballroom was bathed in golden light, the chandeliers casting a warm glow over the elegant crowd that had gathered for the prestigious literary award ceremony. The air hummed with anticipation, a mixture of murmured conversations and the occasional clink of fine china against glass. It was an evening meant to celebrate brilliance, perseverance, and the power of words to change lives. For Emma, it was something much deeper than that. She sat in the front row, her heart pounding with quiet pride as she watched her daughter, Lily, stand at the edge of the stage, preparing to deliver the most important speech of her life. Lily looked radiant in an elegant yet simple navy blue dress, her golden hair pulled back into a soft braid, highlighting her strong, confident features. Emma could still see the little girl who used to twirl in front of the mirror, wearing homemade dresses and dreaming of something bigger. And now, she was here, recognized not just as a brilliant young writer but as a force of inspiration for children across the country. The moment was almost perfect. Almost. From the corner of her eye, Emma spotted them. Richard and Linda sat near the back of the room, their expressions unreadable. It had been years since she had last seen them in person, years since she had cut them out of her life to protect Lily from their suffocating expectations and cruel judgments. And yet, here they were, now that the world had acknowledged Lily's worth. Emma's stomach twisted, but she quickly refocused her attention on her daughter. This night wasn't about old wounds or past disappointments. It was about Lily. A hush fell over the audience as the announcer stepped up to the podium, his voice smooth and deliberate. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor a young woman whose words have touched the hearts of children and parents alike. Her debut book, The Girl Who Found Her Voice, has not only inspired countless readers but has also sparked an important conversation about self-worth, resilience, and embracing one's uniqueness. Please welcome our honoree, Lily Thompson. The applause was thunderous. Lily took a deep breath, then stepped onto the stage, her poise effortless, her confidence undeniable. Emma watched as her daughter approached the microphone, standing in front of hundreds of people without a trace of fear. Then, she began to speak. I was told I wasn't good enough. Her voice was steady, filled with emotion. I was told I wouldn't fit in. That I needed to be different. That I needed to be more. The room fell completely silent, the weight of her words settling over the audience like a heavy, unspoken truth. Emma felt her breath catch, knowing exactly where this speech was leading. But my mother, Lily's eyes found Emma's in the front row, and for a brief moment, time seemed to slow. She believed in me, even when others didn't. She told me I was enough just as I was. That I didn't have to change to be worthy of love or success. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat, her vision blurring with unshed tears. Lily's voice grew stronger. I want every child who has ever been made to feel small to know this: you are enough. Your voice matters. You do not have to fit into someone else's idea of perfection to be worthy. I stand here today not because I changed who I was, but because I embraced it. And because I had a mother who fought for me, who showed me that real love doesn't come with conditions. A standing ovation erupted through the ballroom, applause echoing off the grand walls. Emma sat frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the sheer power of what had just happened. Then, she rose to her feet, joining the applause, her hands trembling with emotion. Lily's eyes shone as she smiled down at her mother. And then, Emma turned to look at her parents. Richard and Linda remained seated, their faces pale, their expressions unreadable. For once, they had nothing to say. No criticisms, no backhanded compliments, no condescending remarks about how things could have been done better. They had spent years looking down on their own granddaughter, only to realize, too late, that she had become someone extraordinary, without them. Emma held her head high, turning her back on them for the last time. She didn't need their approval. She never had, and neither did Lily.